This is module 8, which might seem like we're going over the same ground as before, but that is not entirely the case because we want to reiterate the importance of confirming the complexity of the audit and the scope with the smelter. ISO 19011 and the ITA Assurance Manual provides a helpful guide how to conduct an opening meeting, but that should not be required because as auditors you should be versed with how to conduct an opening meeting. But we're reiterating the important point that during the opening meeting, according to the audit plan, you will need to check that the audit scope and what is to be audited has not changed since the time of the contract agreement to the start of the opening meeting for the on-site audit. As with other auditors, you are best advised to have senior management in attendance in the opening meeting to get their buy-in to ensure that personnel and resources and evidence are available during the days when you're auditing. And if that scope has changed or for some reason it's been misunderstood by both parties and it only transpires in the opening meeting, then clearly the auditor will need to take a step back and consider whether the work can be performed to the required ISA 3000 standard in the time that's been allocated for the audit. During that opening meeting, you will be reconfirming the scope and the arrangements of the smelter with regards to sourcing, whether tolling smelters, which are a smelter, are used because the toll smelter retains due diligence obligation even if the minerals and materials are not owned. We're reconfirming the immediate supplier list, mineral byproducts, red flag review processes, CARA or non-CARA, processes and sources used for determining CARAs, whether Annex 2 risk assessment applies, whether materials are under a UGI, a Universal Joint Initiative, or an institutionalized mechanism. The auditor should not find themselves in the position where it suddenly transpires in the opening meeting that the mineral sourcing is related to conflict affected and high risk areas, because provided the audit and assurance process has followed module 6, contracts have been agreed where the scope is understood, and a preliminary risk assessment has been carried out and a risk and materiality sampling plan, it should not arise that during the opening meeting that the mineral supply chain is linked to CARAs when the auditor is expecting that it's not linked to it. But please do review this process prior to the opening meeting. It's absolutely fundamental prior to starting the opening meeting to determine whether the minerals and material sourcing is linked to CARAs or not. Is that part of the scope of the audit? It's not something that can be added an additional hour or so for a slightly longer day, or to be followed up off-site with regards to a particular mineral supply from a region and a number of suppliers. And if you recall the basic training, it's an extensive process of reviewing the management system arrangements that the smelter has in place with regards to the mineral sources and the evidence available in order to carry out a red flag review. So as you recall, the basic training, if the mineral supply is linked to CARAs and it may also be linked to Annex 2 risks, it is an entirely separate audit than verifying secondary material only from a smelter engaged in taking in end-of-life material. So the auditor, the audit firm should not find themselves in this situation if they followed the correct assurance engagement processes, risk assessment, materiality sampling, verification of the scope, and receiving the mandatory information beforehand and are properly prepared. But for some reason, if it does transpire during the audit that this is the case, there are two options. Either A, the audit could be split into two parts with a secondary visit and arrangements, or a new contract is formed to readdress the whole of the assurance engagement altogether. What cannot occur is a brief addition at the end of the audit or trying to cram in a wider scope of works in a short amount of time that's been allocated based on the auditor's understanding and the audit firm's understanding and the information provided by the smelter. So quite simply, you need to reconfirm the complexity and understand what you as an auditor are going into prior to starting on site. Well, that concludes Module 8, and we cannot underestimate the importance of planning and preparation in carrying out ISA 3000 assurance engagements. And we hope that that module reiterated the importance of planning.